Thank you, everyone who has attended our Just Us Dialogue Symposium. We have had an eventful day. We started out the day with the path to health, equity, and social justice. Where should we begin? Where should we invest? Where should we go? We then led into a restorative justice, repairing harm, finding balance, building hope. We then ended just now with protecting our youth, confronting society's role in the harmonious development of adolescence, and this was a part 2. And now we're about to lead into our keynote address by Dr. Andre Paring from the Brookings Institute. Before that, I would like to introduce you to and welcome Dr. President Kevin Sowers from Johns Hopkins Health System and Executive President of Johns Hopkins Medicine. Kevin has been a significant supporter of the Just Us Symposium series, and we are grateful for his leadership. Let me introduce to you and present to others Kevin Sowers. He is the second person in Johns Hopkins history to hold the dual roles of President of Johns Hopkins Health System and Executive Vice President of Johns Hopkins Medicine. He oversees the health system's 6 hospitals, including Johns Hopkins Hospital, Johns Hopkins Bayview, Howard County General, Suburban Hospital, and Sibley Memorial, and All Children's Hospital in Florida. He sets the strategy and advances our mission to deliver outstanding care and train the next generation of leaders to advance research and discovery. Kevin came to us from Duke University Health System, where he served for 32 years and the last 8 as president and CEO of the Duke University Hospital. He has received many awards and honors, as well as being a leader in many professional organizations. But more importantly, we're thankful and grateful for his leadership at Johns Hopkins. With that, I'll turn it over to Kevin.
Alicia, thank you very much for allowing me to be with you today. And I want to give a shout out to Alicia and the entire team for planning this series. You know, I'm very pleased to be with you to welcome you to this culminating episode of the Just Us Dialogues Road to Equity Symposium. I realize that this is the final segment of a 5-part series of panel discussions. They're aimed at understanding and improving social justice and the health of our communities of color while exploring policies, systems, and environmental strategies to activate reform, address racial inequities, and advance health equities. You know, I've spent most of my career over the last 36 years as a nurse, but a nurse and a leader in academic medicine. I have dedicated my life to advancing the health of our communities by focusing on our missions of excellence in patient care, advancing the science of medicine, and educating the next generation of providers to address challenges facing the health and wellness of our communities that we serve. I believe we are all connected. I believe we are all connected in many different ways. And I hope at some point in time, when the history books are written about this moment in time, it was about the culture change that occurred in this country and around the world. It's not about a time for policy change as we witnessed back during the first era of racism that was dealt with in this country. This is about a cultural change that deals with social injustice and deals with the systemic issues and structural issues of racism. On a personal note, because I told you professionally, on a personal note, I'm an openly gay male, and my partner and my husband is African American. So I understand conscious and unconscious bias in a very personal way. And what I witnessed on a personal level in this country is completely unacceptable. And so that's why I say we are all connected. It will take each and every one of us coming together to address these issues. Johns Hopkins University and Johns Hopkins Medicine are a part of a greater community, and we want to work together, side by side with our local, national, and global thought leaders to lead and advance critical conversations, meaningful strategies, and a call to action to help our nation move forward in a way that is thoughtful, inclusive, and constructive. I thank you for being here today, and I will hand it back over to Alicia.
Thank you, Kevin, for your leadership and for your remarks. And it has been an honor to be a part of your leadership team and also to have your leadership in this as well. Without further ado, I am so excited to introduce everyone to our keynote speaker, Dr. Andre Perry. Dr. Perry is a fellow in the Metropolitan Policy Program at Brookings, a scholar in residence at American University, and a columnist for the Hechinger Report. He's the author of the new book, Know Your Price, Valuing Black Lives and Property in American Cities, which is currently available wherever books are sold. He is also a nationally known and respected commentator on race, structural inequality, and education, and a regular contributor on MSNBC, and has been published by the New York Times, The Nation, The Washington Post, The Root, and CNN.com. Since the COVID-19 pandemic began, Dr. Perry has documented the underlying causes for the outsized number of coronavirus deaths in the Black community, and is planning to map those inequalities in housing, income, and health to underscore how policy discrimination makes Black Americans more vulnerable to COVID-19. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Andre Perry.
Thank you, Alicia. Let me tell you, leadership matters. And when I first met Alicia, she saw me present, I think in Chicago, and she talked to me about the beauty of Baltimore, about the potential of Baltimore, the positive assets in Baltimore. And she said she needed for me to present to the Baltimore community and with Johns Hopkins. And I just want to say she's a woman of her word. She's a woman of strength, dignity, and I am so happy to have met her and to present to you today. I also want to send a shout out to Kevin. I love his frames. As you can see, we're twins in that regard. But I'm Andre Perry. I'm going to present to you on my work. I'm going to share my screen right now. I have a few slides, just a few, to keep you entertained during this presentation. So if you will, put my slides on the screen. Today I'm going to present to you about investment and how Black majority communities are worthy of that investment. A lot of what you will hear today you can find in my new book, Know Your Price, Valuing Black Lives and Property in America's Black Cities, available wherever fine books are sold. I work at the Brookings Institution, where I study Black majority cities. And as you can see here, there are approximately 1,200 all throughout the United States, including Baltimore, one of the largest Black majority cities. I also study Black majority neighborhoods. There's too many to count. I mean, to show on a map like this, but I wanted to get at the value that we assign to assets proximate to Black people. And so that's why I study Black majority populations, because there are lots of assets in these places. But the story I'm about to tell you starts here, 1320 Hill Avenue, Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania. It's a small Black majority municipality surrounded by Pittsburgh on three sides. It has about 16,000 people in it. And I grew up there and in that home, and that home is worth so much to me. But right now you could pick it up for just paying the taxes on it. It's owned by the city of Wilkinsburg. It's been abandoned for more than a decade, close to 2 decades now. And it's essentially worth zero. But for me, that can't be true because of the story behind it. That woman in the upper right-hand corner, her name is Elsie Boyd. I call her Mom. Mom used to tell me the story that when I was born, there was a deal made between my maternal grandmother and her that she would take me into 1320 Hill Avenue. Now, I do know that my mother was poor at the time. She was probably abused. Um, the city was starting to decline in the 70s because U.S. Steel was pulling out of the city. So you had high unemployment. You started to see social decline. And my mom, because many families were struggling, including mine, she took in kids from all parts of the city. So you can see there were kids, white kids, black kids. Mom filled a breach when private industry and government could not or did not. And so, but one of the reasons why she had to take in kids because many men fell victim to drugs. My father, pictured here, Floyd, he became a heroin addict. He was in and out of prison until he died in prison or I should be clear, he was killed in prison a day before his 27th birthday. Young man, but he had issues with drugs. He bounced in and out of prison in Detroit. But I don't think I met him until I started writing my book, and I'll share a little story about that later. But for me, I wanted to understand how he lived. I wanted to go to the places in which he lived, and that's what I did for the research on my book. And it started by me examining home prices where he lived. As you can see on this chart, along the x-axis, that's the concentration of Black people within a particular zip code. And so, and on the y-axis, where is indicated at the top of the bars, you can see the price of homes in those neighborhoods. So in areas where the share of the Black population is less than the percent, the average median home price is about $340,000. Where the share of the Black population is 50% or higher, the price of homes is about half as much as those white areas. Now, a lot of people will say that, I know that, that's because of education, that's because of crime. Well, those are things that we can control for in a study. And that's what I did to get a sense of an apples to apples comparison between homes in Black neighborhoods and white neighborhoods. So we took that absolute price difference. We looked at structural characteristics. So we controlled for houses of the same size with the same number of rooms, so on and so forth. But then we controlled for the neighborhood characteristics. So education, crime, walkability, all those fancy Zillow metrics you hear about. And what we found pretty much astounds. Again, we're looking at apples to apples home in Black neighborhoods and white neighborhoods. Homes in Black neighborhoods are underpriced by 23%. On average, that's about $48,000 per home. Not because of education, not because of crime, but because of the color of the residents in those places. Accumulatively, that's about 156 billion in lost equity, 156 billion. Now, this is occurring all throughout the United States. Wherever you see a magenta circle, that's where housing devaluation occurs. Wherever you see a green circle, those are places in which homes in Black neighborhoods are actually priced higher than their white counterparts. New Jersey, for instance, a 10% difference on about 48,000 per home. Now you can see from this list, some of the devaluation is insane. 81% difference in Lynchburg, 65% difference in Rochester, New York, 47% in Jacksonville. Nashville, for instance, though, is plus 10%. So homes are higher value there. Boston, plus 23. No, Boston is no less racist than Lynchburg, but the home prices are a lot higher. in Black neighborhoods. But I just want you to absorb this $156 billion. You know, we throw around billions like it's just a number, but it means something. It would have financed more than 4 million Black-owned businesses based on the average amount Blacks use to start up their firms. It would have paid for more than 8 million four-year degrees based on the average amount of a four-year public education. It would have replaced the pipes in Flint, Michigan nearly 3,000 times. It would have covered almost all of the damage of Hurricane Katrina, and it's double the annual economic burden of the opioid crisis. Now, the reason why I bring this up, connecting it to my father. Now, I am clear someone else killed him. But when I visited Detroit, when I wrote Know Your Price, I saw that many of the places he lived still has devalued housing, still has inequitable funding for education, still has a lack of resources to start businesses. Now, he may have died at the hands of another inmate, but I charge the devaluation as an accomplice of his death. There is no question, if he was a white person living in a white neighborhood, he would have had better schools, better job opportunities. He would have, instead of having his drug use criminalized, he probably would have, and sent to jail, he probably would have ended up in some kind of drug treatment facility. This is a big number, and it's literally robbing Black people of an opportunity to climb social and economic ladders. People are doing everything they are asked to do to achieve the American dream, and racism is extracting wealth, disabling their life chances. This is why I say all the time, there's nothing wrong with Black people that ending racism can't solve. There's a white supremacist myth that states that the conditions and the Black neighborhoods and Black cities are a direct result of the people in them. We hear people talk about personal responsibility, talking about pulling your pants up and, you know, cutting your hair and all those different things. It is clear that belt-wearing strategies isn't getting people into Harvard. It's wealth. Wealth is a proxy from everything from health to education to marriage, to marriage attainment, to educational attainment. All this wealth predicts for this. And no, white people didn't get wealthy because they were more financially literate. You give somebody some wealth and they become financially literate. So we got to stop blaming Black folk for the conditions in cities. It has to stop. I want to show you the denial of racism in our communities, the denial of racism. I want you to listen to this clip. This is Representative Al Green. I presented to the Financial Services Committee in the House Financial Service Committee with the appraisal industry. Take a listen.
If you think Black people are being discriminated when their property is being appraised, would you kindly raise your hand? One person on the panel. If you think that, for fear that I'm not communicating well, if you think that Black people are not being discriminated against when their property is being appraised, if you think they're not being discriminated against, kindly raise your hand. Okay, hands now. We're getting some consternation, I see.
You know, this is almost ridiculous. Now, if there's one sector that clearly there's discrimination because it was legal to discriminate against Black people, it's housing. Now, what I think is the point here, people will say, and after this hearing, people told me, I've never broken a law. I've never done anything legally wrong. Well, if the law is broken, that does not let you off the hook from discriminating. My research shows that there's practices that have been normalized in our society. This is, and I want to be clear, this is somewhat a metaphor for what happens in housing, healthcare, education, infrastructure work, all these sectors. There is a drag of racism in the markets that we know it's there. It comes out of the wash in the research. It comes out of the wash, but our systems support it. Now, this is the very definition of structural inequality, institutional racism, that people don't have to act wrongly to get a racist result. You don't have to do anything but follow the rules, because the rules are tilted against Black people. I want to show you how this shows up in another sector, in business. So we know that Black people represent about 13% of the population, but only 2% of employer businesses, meaning businesses with at least or two employees. The Black businesses, 1% of Black business owners obtain loans in their founding year, compared to 7% of white entrepreneurs. Black business owners are denied loans more than twice as often as their peers, largely, and that's, remember, largely because of housing devaluation. When you don't have equity, you're more likely to get denied. And when we do get loans, we get higher interest rates. About half of Black businesses survived the Great Recession, compared to 60% of white-owned firms. And that number is only going to get worse, because we know that 95% of Black businesses did not receive PPP loans when the CARES Act rolled out. I want to introduce you to Dorian Moorfield. He's the founder and chef of Grandma B's. It's a restaurant located in Pittsburgh's Hill District, a Black neighborhood. Grandma B's is a generally successful business. It gets great Yelp reviews, more than 4.5 stars out of 5 rating, which is, very solid, very good, quality business. But the Hill District's changing. In 2010, it was about 100% Black. And now it's 80% Black. It's rapidly changing racial composition. And what Dorian tells me, the lights are getting fixed, the garbage is now getting picked up. A lot of different services that should have existed, particularly for a great business, is starting to happen now that white people are moving in. But I wanted to get a sense of you hear this Black businesses aren't as good, Black businesses service is bad, all these different things. That's why you're not seeing the kind of investment in Black businesses in that data we showed earlier. That's the reason why Black businesses aren't getting, because of the quality. So we did another study. We looked at business revenue. We got that from Dun & Bradstreet. And it also provided the race of the owner, so we could get a race of the owner on that. Then we scraped Yelp data from all the businesses in the country to get a sense of quality, so we could get an apples to apples comparison between Black businesses and white businesses. We control for neighborhood conditions, so we control for education, essentially spending power in a neighborhood. Because we wanted to get an apples to apples comparison between businesses and their social circumstances. And what we found, Black, brown, and Asian-owned businesses are rated just as high, if not higher. When you don't control for this kind of business, Black, brown, and Asian businesses are actually ranked higher than their white counterparts. But they get fewer stars and lower ratings as the concentration of Black businesses, or the concentration of Black people in a neighborhood increases. Let me show you. So here you can see again the concentration of Black people on the x-axis, the Yelp rating, and this time instead of housing prices on the y-axis. Black, brown, and Asian businesses consistently score higher than their white counterparts. But as Black people, the share of the Black population increases, the ratings decrease, and the number of ratings actually decrease. Highly rated businesses experience lower revenue growth as a result. And it's costing Black businesses, or I'm sorry, businesses in Black neighborhoods upwards of 4 million annually, 4 billion annually. Again, a big number. Now, our elders used to have a saying in Black neighborhoods. They used to say, our ice is just as cold. They knew that when you bypass quality in the hood, you were essentially having high quality businesses compete with low quality businesses, throttling economic growth, throttling revenue growth, throttling profits. And ultimately that hurts the community, the Black community. But we know our ice is just as cold. You know, so much of my research it has the data run through the lived experience. You know, typically the framework is we're going to counter what Black people say. We don't care what they say. That's typically the case. But what my research constantly does, it actually backs up what we know, that our ice is just as cold. Our homes are valuable because we are valuable. So when folks say Black Lives Matter, this is a fact, but it is not recognized. Black people are devalued, and it comes out in the wash in the research. So how do you counter this phenomenon? You know, first, let's be clear, cut the check, cut the check. You have to invest in people. You have to invest in homeowners, potential homeowners, and potential business owners and business owners. You know, I'll pivot to on the right-hand side. If you invest in place, meaning if you invest in brick and mortar and non-people, you eventually help raise the property values, and people can't keep pace. And you force displacement as a result. You invest in place and not people, you get gentrification. That's why we need to find vehicles to invest in people. Excuse me. We also need to remove, excuse me, remove unnecessary barriers for entrepreneurship. Meaning, we don't need another program to build capacity. We need direct investment. And so that's what we need. We need to invest in people. And we need to create programs and incentives to have businesses start in Black neighborhoods. Again, if you don't incentivize people to stay in Black businesses, they will leave. And so that's what we need to do. You know, I'm going to go to my book, Know Your Price. There's a reason why I named the book Know Your Price. The title actually is derived from my favorite play in the world, Two Trains Running by August Wilson. Now, in the play, there's a character by the name of Memphis. Memphis has a restaurant, and in the play, he's about to have his property seized through eminent domain by the city of Pittsburgh. The city asks for $15,000 for the property. Memphis says, no, I'm not selling my property for $15,000. I know my price. I got my price. There's another character. His name is Hambone. Hambone makes a deal with a proprietor. He says, I'll paint a fence for you if you give me a ham. He paints the fence. He never gets his ham. Throughout the play, he says, give me my ham, give me my ham, give me my ham. Now, we don't know if he had mental illness before he painted the fence, but eventually he goes crazy and eventually he dies. Now, I know people are like, man, that's a sad ending. But there's actually a happy ending. The main character, Memphis, gets $35,000 for his efforts, $35,000 for constantly going to the city saying, I know my price, I know my price. And the moral of the story should be obvious. You got to know you have worth and you need to act on it. What my book, Know Your Price, tries to do is give people a price to stand on. You know, we are in this struggle together. And we're going to face people who don't believe that there's discrimination in this world. They don't believe racism exists. They believe that it's our fault. And I'm here to tell you, we must demand our price, even if it means going crazy and dying. That is the reality. A lot of us will have that happy ending. Some of us won't. But nonetheless, we have got to fight for what we deserve. I'm going to close there and drink a big gulp of water. And I'm assuming we're going to have questions at this point and a discussion. So thank you, Alicia, for your wonderful, wonderful hospitality.
You are so welcome. Take that big gulp of water, Andre. We have so many questions coming in for you through all of our social media channels. People can also text those questions into 22333 and type JHMI in the question box. Let me give you the first question, Andre. Someone's asked, what can be done to change the valuation issue that you raised with respect to your grandmother's house in real estate?
You know, right now, the appraisal industry is getting a lot of attention. Some of you saw a New York Times article in which there was a white wife and a black wife and a white husband who got an appraisal and it came in low, and they decided they sensed there was some discrimination going on. They scrubbed all the blackness out of the house. They changed the books, they changed the artwork, and they got $120,000 or something around that, more than $100,000, an additional money on the appraisal once that happened. Now, that should not happen. That can't happen. And so in that hearing, a lot of the folks who were there have now decided to work with me to say, hey, something is going on, because the evidence is clear. But it's not just the appraisal industry. We need to sniff out what's going on in lending. Not to get too in the weeds, because I know this is an audience, a broader audience, but Dodd-Frank created this arm's length relationship between lenders and appraisals. And when it comes to Black communities, it really does seem like they're not talking at all. Where in white communities, there is some kind of conversation so they can land on the proper price, right? So for me, there are concrete things around pricing that we can do, but, and we're doing that. I'm actually, be on the lookout. I'm working with Ashoka, the Ashoka organization. We're going to have $1 million challenge competition, where we're going to give away $1 million of prize money for individuals who are working on this devaluation piece, because we want to fund people who are proximate to the problem. And if you have solutions, it might be a new mortgage product. You might see that there's homes in your neighborhood that are priced too low for a bank to back, that then we create a new mortgage product so low income residents can actually buy those homes. It might be new credit scoring systems that we develop, but we're going to incentivize people who have great ideas.
Let me ask you this question, Andre. Following up on that, are we training our leaders, our next set of leaders, whether it be in high school, but poignantly, our colleges, our universities, our business schools, to explain the concepts you just talked about, to assist them in how, when they assume their seats of power in their platforms, they're changing policy and asking the questions that elicit the responses in that you just talked about? Is that at any level?
No, I do think it is occurring. If you get a chance, Planet Money, this yesterday actually did a podcast on me. It was on NPR, I think, yesterday. And you can actually check out the podcast, and they talk about my work setting a new paradigm for economics, explaining what devaluation means in different sectors. So in my book, I talk about devaluation in healthcare. Remember, Black women are devalued in that system. I talk about devaluation in politics. Black women are devalued in that area. There are lots of different areas. And so for me, this is a new concept that we do need to teach in universities and in think tanks and universities. Let's be clear. Many of our professors and think tank leaders still operate under a paradigm of racial disparity. They constantly produce data that shows white people here, Black people here, and in order for there to be justice, it requires getting parity with white folks. Parity with white folks aren't going to bring justice. We need systems that work for everyone. And we need to break that deficit frame, because this is what happens when it comes to investment. When you paint Black people as deficits, you also frame them as problems needing to be fixed. Where then does investment go? It goes to essentially to people to fix Black people, right? Education is littered with white saviors for that reason. And so we need to stop this disparity framing and start looking at the devaluation, because there's assets in the hood that are valuable. Again, our ice is just as cold. There's nothing wrong with us. We need to just say that together. There's nothing wrong with Black people that ending racism can't solve. Say it with me, everybody, because we've internalized that there's something wrong with us. And the data just doesn't bear that out. So for me, we do need to go get Know Your Price now. Send it to your professors. Say, hey, why don't you teach this book instead of this other one? But I'm being serious there. But the point is, we do need to infuse a new set of books, new frames in our training, because we keep recycling the racial disparity as well as the white supremacist myths that is inherent in our previous work.
So someone commented on Facebook, and I want to see what your comment would be to this. They said we either invest on the front end or pay for it tremendously on the back end. Can you
That's right.
talk to that?
Nothing grows without investment. I said this in the podcast I referenced to, that there's a Vietnamese philosopher that says, when you look at a head of lettuce and it's not growing, you don't blame the lettuce. You look to see if the soil's right. You look to see if it's getting sunlight. You look to see if rainwater's hitting it. You don't blame the lettuce. But when it comes to Black folk, that's what we do. We blame the lettuce all day long. In education, we blame Black teachers. And when it comes to criminal justice, we blame Black people. I mean, it's like when it comes to healthcare, you hear this, oh, if they would just exercise more, stop smoking, stop drinking, they wouldn't get COVID. Come on. The pre-existing condition of racism is the problem. These racist policies are the problem. And that comes from, and that leads to a lack of investment. Nothing grows without investment. If you're talking about lettuce or if you're talking about someone's health.
Yep.
If you don't see it growing, you look for those conditions. You don't blame the lettuce.
Yeah. It goes into, and we have a number of young people watching, Andre. So I know you love young people. So I want you to speak to them when they ask this question.
Dre loves the kids. Dre loves the kids.
Bring up the kids and bringing up the kids. And you can tell this is moving their hearts. They said, you mentioned knowing your worth. I would actually feel for this person when they say this. If the system always treats us as less, how will I ever learn my worth?
There is a learning in fighting a system.
Yeah.
I think it is exhausting. It is tiring. But I'm here because I learned to fight a system.
Yeah.
I learned the ins and outs of systems, fighting it.
Mhm.
And I and I'm surviving. Yes, there are a lot of pain. There's a lot of pain. A lot of people don't survive it. But I'm here to tell you the wisdom, the strength, find the financial security. I mean, there are a lot of benefits of learning how to get out of a system, to beat a system,
Yeah.
to deconstruct a system. So I would say keep fighting. But I will say get organized and mobilized. Join something. When you are feeling tired, get with other people who are working on that same issue. You are not alone. I never talked about my dad before really writing this book to this extent. I never did. And it really wasn't. I mean, a few years back, a high schooler said to me, I was talking about, going to school or something like that, staying in school. And they said, what do you know? You probably had a silver spoon in your mouth and all this other stuff. And I said, I have the same story as you.
Mhm.
I have the same story as somebody in Baltimore and St. Louis and Ferguson, Wilkinsburg. I'm that kid. I was given a few opportunities. I got lucky, but I've been fighting systems. That's my climb. I've learned I don't have to play a game that's built against me, that's stacked against me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so keep striving, keep pushing, and victory will come.
Let me ask you this. I know this is someone from one of our Black institutions, and they said, what role do our Black financial institutions and credit unions play in helping to create a better balance?
Oh man, they're absolutely critical.
Mhm.
When you look at the Black business owners who actually do get loans, a high percent of them get them from Black led CDFIs or Black owned banks. The issue is that we need to build capacity of those because those are high touch, low volume institutions for the most part.
Mhm.
So we need to make sure that they can reach a bigger number of people. Unfortunately, because of CARES Act, they enrich mainstream banks and not smaller banks. So we're working to help fix that issue. But yeah, they're absolutely powerful. They're anchors for many, and we need more of them. And
Mhm.
we need to build, give greater capacity so they can serve more. Again, representation matters. And when you have bankers and lenders who see the value in our Black neighborhoods, our homes, our businesses, they're more likely to lend to those things.
Let me ask you this. Someone asked, is it realistic to think that we could create Black Wall Streets in this day and age as they existed pre-desegregation?
Yeah, but it's a much different day and the age of Amazon,
Mhm.
so, but we always need consumer facing businesses. Remember, barbershops are still there. We poo-hoo barbershops all the time. We say, oh, those aren't at the scale and this and that, but they're still there. They're still thriving. So we need sort of consumer or neighborhood facing businesses, but we also need high growth industries that are founded in along Black commercial corridors. And I'm starting to do that work I have a chapter in my book called Buy Back the Block. Nipsey Hussle, others. I'm working with a lot of different people around the country. um, well, Nipsey, he has passed, but he was among a cohort of folks doing just that. Now, you're right. Eventually, we do need customers from outside the neighborhood. We need investment from outside the neighborhood, but we should have places that affirm us, that when we go to it, we see ourselves. We can buy our products. we can, and those benefits bleed into the communities neighboring by. So we should be aiming for that, but it's a different type of game now. We do need to invest in high growth industries, tech, tech, tech. And so when we are looking to incubate places, we need to find ways to incubate those high growth industries.
Next question came up, and I think people are seeing how you talked about your journey and your system, the fact that you've been battling systems. They want to know, was there a mentor, an advocate, a sponsor that took an interest in your success? Can you talk about that?
Ooh, yeah. When you are troubled as me, I mean, I am a handful. So
I know.
Yeah,
Just in this.
I'm a handful. So of course, professors, there's a few. I'll just name Sharon Fries-Britt. She's a professor at University of Maryland, College Park. I got my Ph.D. there. She took me in spite of me. I've always, what's interesting, the same way mom took me in as a child, I've had professionals take me in, to say, hey, I'm gonna show you. The whitest white man you ever want to meet, Kenneth Strike, philosopher. He's one of the top he was one of the top philosophers in the country. He retired. As Anglo as you want to get, but he taught me how to ask the right questions. He's a great philosopher. Took me in. I will say that I've been blessed to have a number of mentors. Freeman Rabowski of UMBC, University of Maryland.
Oh, my mentor. Yeah, Freeman is truth.
He taught me, excellence at every level.
Yes.
So I know we're closing. I do want to thank all those folks who helped me along the way. This is the fruit of their labor, me helping others. And I'm charged to do the same.
No, we are grateful to you, Andre. You are doing powerful work in this world, and we're grateful for you in this time. So just thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, John Hopkins. Keep getting it.
All right. Don't worry if you hear that sound. My house is not on fire, but let me close us out. We just had an amazing opportunity to hear from Dr. Andre Perry. I think there are two quotes that I will never forget from his remarks. One, our ice is just as cold. And two, that there is nothing wrong with Black people that solving racism can't solve. And so those two remarks, we're just grateful for him, for his leadership in our country, and thankful for him for being for today's symposium. Let me again thank our sponsors, Johns Hopkins University, Johns Hopkins Health System, Johns Hopkins Medicine, as well as the Urban Health Institute, and a huge thank you to the National Association of Health Services Executives. Let me close by saying a couple of things. One, this symposium was not an exercise. It was not an academic undertaking. It was something to move us as an institution and more importantly, as a community. And so the things and the dialogues that we have are not being just recorded on Facebook and put on YouTube. They allow for us to reflect as an institution on who we are and what we're going to become. And you will be seeing things from us. And I think you already have started to see how we are just letting our words match our actions around being with the community and of the community. So thank you for tuning in. I would be remiss if I did not lift up 5 amazing women who have made this all possible. Audrey Johnson, Vanya Jones, Marissa McKeever, Antonia Daniels, Elizabeth Hapevy, and Jackie Bryan. They are really the architects and the heartbeat of this Just Us Dialogue series, and it could not have happened without them. Grateful for our leaders like Lisa Cooper, Kevin Sowers, and Ron Daniels, but I had to lift up those women who are just amazing leaders within our institution, and grateful for their hard work in putting this all on. Thank you for attending this Just Us Dialogue series. Please continue to dialogue with us on our many different social channels at JH Connects on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. And also email us your feedback. We welcome it at jhconnects@jhu.edu. With that, I just want to say thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.